Scientists from the University of Queensland say the first results of their COVID-19 vaccine trials are promising. The researchers say the preclinical tests using hamsters reveal the vaccine triggered the immune system to protect against the disease. The treatment is also in phase 1 of human trials. Professor Paul Young is one of the scientists working on the vaccine, and he joins us now from Brisbane. Paul Young, welcome, and thanks so much for setting some time aside to have a quick chat to us because I'm guessing you've been quite busy. So how optimistic are you that this could be the one?
It's a pleasure to be with you, Joe. Quite optimistic. I mean, with as everyone has said, with progressing these vaccines, nothing is ever a guarantee. And until we go through the phase 1 through to 3 clinical trials and get the data out of that, we won't be fully clapping and pronouncing victory. But at this stage, what we've seen is very good immune responses in the animal model that seems to be the best for testing SARS-CoV-2. And also, we've now got very good data showing protection from challenge in those animals. So we can say that the immunisation has in fact protected from disease. So virtually no disease in the lungs, and has suppressed the virus in the respiratory tract as well.
Yeah, so go into a bit more detail for us, explaining the work that you've done with the hamsters.
So the preclinical studies are always critical to going into clinical trials with putting the vaccine into humans. We have progressed our phase 1 clinical trial, and that started in early July. And the reason for that was we had early indications out of that preclinical study. So what today is doing is really releasing all of the final data from that preclinical trial, and it is extremely promising. The other information that we've released is also the levels of production of the vaccine is exceptional. In terms of what we're likely to be able to produce, or at least CSL, our manufacturing partner, are likely to be able to produce in terms of doses. So those two arms of the study is really the key. One, we've afforded protection against challenge with a live virus in a relevant animal model, and we've shown that we're able to produce a significant quantity of the vaccine such that when we scale up, we'll be able to be generating millions of doses that should be able to be deployed.
And what about where you're at with the human trials?
So in the human trials, this is a phase 1 study, so it's really about safety, but we've also embedded into that trial an analysis of what dose we should be giving subsequently. So we've administered a low, a medium and a high dose, and we're looking at responses to those immunisations. We've managed to get through all of the cohorts now, so that all of our vaccinees have received each of those 3 doses, or the relevant cohorts have, and what we can say is that it's been well tolerated and appears to be safe. So the next measure out of that particular phase 1 clinical trial is to measure their immune responses, and then to unblind the data so we can actually report on that. And that should be in October. Yeah. With that data in October, we should be able to then hand over to CSL to take on the next phases of the clinical studies.
And so the people you've injected so far are healthy people?
Correct. So 18 to 55-year-olds. So that's always the case in these phase 1 clinical trials, and later down the line in further clinical studies there will be involvement in other levels of participants.
Yeah. And can you explain for us in layman's terms what the elements are of this vaccine that you're working with and where it's come from?
So we started our vaccine study, or the generation of the vaccine, back in January, when the sequence of the isolates from Wuhan were first broadcast. So what we were able to do was take that sequence and generate synthetically or recombinantly a version of the outer part of the virus. So this is the part of the virus that our immune systems really focus on to defend themselves. So we're literally presenting just that outer part of the virus as part of the vaccine. It requires an adjuvant, and CSL, our partners, offered their proprietary adjuvant MF59 way back in February, and so we've been doing all of our preclinical studies looking at our vaccine in the context of co-delivery with their adjuvant. And all of these studies are being done in collaboration with our partners at the ANU and the Doherty Institute as well.
And so was this approach something that the researchers at UQ came up with, or was this part of an international collaboration where researchers around the world were designated with particular ways of trying to come up with a vaccine?
It came up slightly differently for us. We've been working on this particular platform technology that underpins our vaccine for the last 10 years. And in fact, we received funding from the Coalition for Epidemic Preparedness Innovations, or CEPI, who are funding a lot of the current COVID trials. We received funding from them last year to begin a process of developing a rapid response vaccine pipeline for just such an occasion. So it was quite fortuitous that we were already ramping up and developing the pipeline activities that would be able to deliver a vaccine at scale and quite quickly. So they contacted us as soon as the virus emerging in Wuhan appeared as though it was going to spread globally, and triggered us working our way all the way through to manufacture.
Yeah, so this is a genuinely original Australian vaccine.
It's Queensland science at its best.
Yeah, okay. So if it's successful, is it likely it would be a two-shot process?
Yes, I mean, like all, this is called a subunit vaccine when you have a component of the virus, and it does require a two-shot regime. So we tested a one-shot as well as part of our preclinical studies, and while we see some level of protection with a single shot, it's that second shot that really does boost the immunity even further.
Yeah. And you've touched on this before, Paul, but just take us through the work that's been done already on making this as available as possible if it's successful. So
the agreement that has been made back in June between CEPI, ourselves, and CSL was one of shared responsibility for the generation of these doses. CEPI will contribute funding into the subsequent manufacture, as will CSL, and the proportional investment that each of those make will define the doses that they have at their disposal. So from CSL's perspective, and they are probably better to talk to you about this, but from CSL's perspective, they are obviously tasked with biosecurity Australia issues, so their doses will be going towards the Australian population. The doses that CEPI will have allocated based on that shared contribution will go into what they refer to as an equitable access pathway. So there will be an international advisory board that defines where those vaccines should go, where those doses should go for the best use. But that shared responsibility ensures that Australia and the region will be covered in terms of this vaccine.
And Paul, when do you think you'll come to a conclusion as to definitively say whether this vaccine is successful or not?
It's the $64 million question, the one we get asked all the time. The answer to it is as quickly as we can. These trials are being taken through at a speed with which we've never tried before, and so an accelerated pipeline of clinical trial activity where we're looking at multiple components that normally would be split out into a broader clinical phase trial will take place over the next year. Again, CSL are probably the best to give you an answer as to the likely outcome and times, but the way the clinical phase trials are facing up now, I would imagine middle of next year is when we'd have our first access to it.
Wow. And Paul, I'm interested to get a personal insight here because we hear today there have been another 24 deaths in Victoria in the past 24 hours and so many deaths around the world. Do you feel the weight of this on your shoulders and with the importance of your work?
I think the whole team feels that pressure ever since we started, and this vaccine has been one of the leading ones certainly in Australia. We have felt the pressure to move it as fast as possible. I guess we said right from the very start that we're looking at about an 18-month timeline. We would move it as fast as we can, and we've sort of kept with that. We entered the clinical phase trials pretty much on the timeline that we'd originally intended, and we're trying to speed up, along with our CSL partners, those clinical trials as fast as possible, because we are aware of the impact, obviously, that this virus is having, not only here in Australia and particularly in Victoria, but also globally.
Okay, Paul Young, thanks so much for having a chat to us. Good luck with your work there in Queensland.
Thank you very much.